What's up? I don't know what this video is gonna be, but I just want to chuck the camera on. I'm at the desk. It's the weekend. It's a Saturday. We had a public holiday yesterday. I guess I could talk about that a little bit because it was actually a pretty crazy day, and it's, I don't know. I think I've got a habit of like doing interesting experiences and then kind of really heavily reflecting on it and then using that as a growth pillar forward because I haven't been feeling amazing today. Probably sounds like all these videos I'm just down, but like I'm pretty much grinding pretty heavy, and then I go into reflective states which are like lower emotionally, vibrationally, whatever you want to just call it, and then I sort of spout out of it, if that makes sense. So it's like a graph, there are dead cat bounces and then I bounce back up, and it's been probably consistently like that for quite a long time now, and it's probably how I operate best. But yeah, yesterday we did some hill sprints with the MMA gym that I train at, which one of my best mates sort of kind of partly owns, and I have other friends there, like working there as well, very close friends. So it's a pretty cool place to go and train, and I've picked up the intensity there recently, which has been very, very good on the whole for my health, I would say. It's helping me live more healthily and live in a more balanced way. But yeah, with the with the hill sprints yesterday, we sort of did 10 laps, and each lap was sort of sprinting up about 50 stairs, which were there were like kind of four main parts of the stairs, and then there was a gap in between. But yeah, probably about 50 stairs on average, and then like jogging around the block, and each lap was probably just under a kilometer. And I had an energy drink before it, and I just pushed, kept the pace high on the stairs, and then sort of like really focused on reducing my heart rate for the other stuff. And yeah, it worked. I mean, I finished in first. Not that it was a race. I was really trying not to think in that way of it being a race. I was more just like, let's try get into that state of flow where I'm pushing myself. And I would say I got into that. Like the mental state that was most useful was, I would say it was a state of like gratitude almost. So even when I was sort of like 7 laps deep, it was, rather than kind of my heart rate being really high and dropping, knowing I've got to do another sprint, it's not about completing it. I was trying to think in a way of more like, there's 100 laps rather than there's 10, there's 100. I'm willing to take 100 to sort of reset my compass of like how long and hard this is going to be, and make it feel like 10 isn't that much. And then the second part is like having gratitude for being in that state, with my heart pumping, feeling alive, sunny day, surrounded by good people. Even though I was in that pain, it was like, I love this, and try almost manipulating your mind, because obviously you are hurting, but like that, by creating that state of joy, it actually helps you get into a better state of flow, which then allows you to keep a high pace without it being torturous, if that makes sense. And then that also probably increased my pace in the later rounds. And I was using these flat reef shoes, like I don't know how to describe it, but my legs are pretty destroyed. But yeah, anyway, and then we went and did like a crazy upper body chest workout as well, and then went for a sauna and just kind of just died. Like I just felt so relaxed throughout my entire body. I felt so calm, felt amazing, honestly. And it felt amazing in one way, but then also there's this like nagging part of yourself, which is just like, I'm not being productive. So yeah, that's the other side of things. And I'm kind of groggy today, you know. I'm on the app Whoop. My recovery is kind of low. So I don't know. I'm not kind of in quite a reflective state right now. I've done a little bit of work, but it's more reflective. But yeah, I guess I had a comment. So the funny thing about this channel is, like, honestly, I don't know. I want to project certain ideas and thoughts. I want to express something. I was kind of looking at it. I was listening to one of, like, the first video, for example. I listened to it a few times and I was like, why am I even posting this? What is the point? You know, no one's going to listen to it. Why don't I just talk to a friend or a family member or something? You know, what's even the point of YouTube? Like, I don't know. I kind of went down that a little bit. It's like, I don't know. Like, well, actually, I've got a bit of an answer. It's kind of like, I think even though we have like close friends and family members, and we can discuss certain things, and conversations seem kind of more flow state, in the sense that they can kind of go in any direction. It's more about the connection between two human beings that know each other, want to learn from each other, support each other, maybe love each other. And that's, you know, that's an incredibly important part of life. Whereas talking about a specific subject, or even if it's, let's say, writing, like people used to write articles and stuff, now we've got GBT, so things have changed on that front. That's more business angle. But then obviously you've got academics releasing papers, delving into specific subjects. You have people writing on LinkedIn about a new innovation or something, a strategy they've tried that works and things like that. So you're never going to say that to someone in a conversation, or you will say it in conversation, but you're never going to go into it in real depth. And I think that's probably what this is. It's like talking about a subject or an experience in a way where I can really flesh my thoughts out. For example, right now I'm just talking about this, and I've been on the subject the last 3 episodes, like reflecting on why I'm doing this as a segment of it, and I don't see it as an issue, because for some reason I want to express this, and I think it's like an ongoing journey. But yeah, like somehow the video is already at like 35 views, and I have no idea how the algorithm's working. And I don't know. I'm curious about that, because like, as I said, like, this is on a pocket of YouTube. No one's going to watch it. Until there's a reason to watch it. But then it's also like, in the first video, I used certain terms like mastery, evolution, things like that. And I wonder if the algorithm will, on occasion, show that for someone who maybe is searching for that in particular, or you know, it's testing it for the people who are most likely going to watch it. Maybe that's based on they have a tendency to watch lower view channels. You know, there'll be something algorithmic. But we got a comment, which I did not expect. We had a comment and we got a couple subscribers. Just me literally turning on a camera and talking. And the comment was, in fact, no, I won't. It's basically saying, you know, I'm also interested in soul vibrations. Do you have any books you would recommend? So what I would say to that is, okay, this concept is quite sort of woo-woo in Western culture, I would say. Like, that is not a widely discussed idea. Although I think it has come up a lot more online. But it's just, I don't know, the type of people who talk about it, it just feels like it's in that kind of like, I don't like spiritualism type realm. You know, people going on retreats and like believing like star signs and shit like that, you know, like that kind of vibe. Whereas I'm really interested in this specific graph that I saw recently. And it turns out it was founded by, what's his name? Let me just pull this up. This is like the most raw content. Honestly, as I said, I don't expect anybody to watch this right now, but maybe this will be useful at some point in the future. And that's part of the joy in doing this, the literal zero expectations, but still being able to talk. I know I keep saying this again and again, but I'm just processing it. Okay, so this is the graph. The issue is I'm literally filming on a front camera and I can't see what you're seeing. But the link, it may be in case someone does see this video, I'm just going to chuck it in the description, because why not? But I've been very interested in this recently, and the main reason for that is, I think there's multiple reasons, but a big one is I've got much higher self-awareness around my emotions at the moment. So basically, look at these emotions. Well, it starts with death, which is the lack of life. You got shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, pride, courage, neutrality, willingness, acceptance, blah, 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 all the way up until the full consciousness, which they describe as the 12th dimension, which again sounds like bullshit, right? Like, what does that even mean? You have enlightenment, which is divine grace and love, the great void. The thing is, of course, these concepts are going to sound crazy because most people aren't experiencing that. Most people are experiencing what you would say the third dimension and below, which is very human emotions that come as a result of our own instincts and the society and culture that we're born into. But yeah, so the founder of this book, whose name, I should find the name real quick. So the Richard Barrett? No, I don't think it's Richard Barrett. Hold on a second. So we got power versus force. David R. Hawkins, power versus force. Okay, so I think he was the original founder of this concept. But yeah, look, one of his ideas is that the average level of consciousness has risen from, I think he said 175 to the low 200s in recent years or recent decades. And I think he was mainly talking about America. Part of me, after having looked at this for a while, is kind of skeptical on that. I'll just keep the camera on it. Just because I don't think the score system is kind of chronological, if that makes sense. So, like, for example, what would you say? Anger isn't necessarily better than fear. They are kind of part of the same parcel, if that makes sense. So, most of the emotions in this third dimension are like kind of negative. It's when you get to courage and beyond that things start getting a lot better. So yeah, when he says, society has shifted from 175 to 200, I guess what he's saying is that there are more people taking actions that move in a positive direction. I would say more people transitioning from the sort of the third dimension to the fourth dimension, which sounds like would make more sense, and maybe he does discuss that. I haven't seen yet. But yeah, I guess just quickly on my own experience with this, and I'm sure I can talk about this more, and I also don't want to rush things. Maybe I will just go into it a little bit. Look, like pride, anger, desire. So these are emotions that I've felt a lot over recent years. And I mean, even just having self-awareness over your emotions is something I don't think many people have. It's probably, I think it is quite a rarity to really understand when you are feeling a certain way and how to sort of control that and, act in the best way you can. But yeah, I'm just looking at pride. Pride's when, you could, let's say you complete a project, and you're driving home, you listen to rap music and you're feeling like the man. Like you're prideful. Maybe you go to a party feeling prideful and you pipe up a bit more and or something like that. Anger, we've got desire. Everyone knows these things, right? Like, but when I'm in a low mood, I'm definitely down here in the sort of shame, guilt, grief, and it's usually like, honestly, there would normally be substances that lead to those. Whether it's cannabis, psychedelics, whatever. But yeah, those things can also help you reach high levels if you use them in the right way, which is kind of like the main reason for doing it. Because you can learn things from that, or yeah. Anyway, that's a big discussion for another day. But a very interesting thing happens when you reach courage, or when you decide to act on courage, right? And people have had to do this throughout their lives. It's not like people have only ever lived in the third dimension. People have probably experienced things up in the fifth dimension, possibly, or maybe they've got as high as acceptance, or maybe some inner wisdom. But to experience those enlightened states, I'm trying to learn more about how that can be naturally achieved, because I don't think it's easy in day-to-day life in our current society, without certain things. But from what it seems to be about generosity and service to people. A great example is like the music video God's Plan by Drake, where he's giving a bunch of people like a lot of money and saying, he gave the music video budget away to his fans, or not to his fans, or like, people in his community and things like that. And the emotion that's created is like deeply emotional for the people receiving the money, because they've been carrying a lot of emotional weight, responsibility for their family in likely a state of poverty. And then obviously feels powerful for Drake because he is the one contributing that. And, if you do that multiple times in a row, that's going to give you this real sense of love and unity and closer to enlightenment, to put it simply, I think. So, and that's what the provider can do. But then we also, if you look at Drake's career post that, or just around it, he's always been someone filled with pride, especially, and fear. And, I would say in the past, that's the music of him that I've probably been most attracted to. And now that I actually reflect on my music choices, there's been a lot of wanting to listen to pride and being attracted to that emotion. And, before I saw this chart, I couldn't really structure that idea in the same way. But yeah, it's quite interesting. It's very interesting. Think about like Trump, for example. He is, a complete narcissist. And yeah, it seems like narcissism is like, it's as prideful as you can get. I feel like narcissists are very much in like the third dimension, and they can achieve a lot of success from it. you can achieve a lot of success in our modern world through desire, through fear, through pride and courage. But the as you can see the cool thing about this chart is that there are some titles up here, right? And it says key to transcending to the next level, what we experience, state of consciousness, locations. By the way, this is not an introduction to this. This would probably be the hardest lesson ever to learn, because I'm just like scattering all over the place, and that's kind of how I think. But yeah, I think someone who is, feeling, it says, I am worthy. That's the key to get to the next level. I think that's the thing. When you feel like you're not enough, it can really drive you through fear to achieve a lot of success. And I think also it will fail in that at times if you give up. But for some hyper successful people, that insecurity is a thing that can really, it can really elevate you. And I think that I've probably used that fear a lot, and used that insecurity a lot in my own life to progress. And that's something that I'm currently shifting from and dealing with internally, is that kind of state. And I've basically switched to a whole new value system, which I talked about in the last episode, which is much more focused on service. So I am interested in increasing my own sort of like average vibrational level, which is a hard thing to measure, right? But I think through increased self-awareness, you can kind of keep track of your emotional state throughout the week. I've been using Whoop, so that's another way in which I can sort of measure and keep track of things. With the emergence of like Neuralink and these other technologies, I was even thinking, like, imagine being able to track your brainwaves and your emotions on this scale. And imagine if there was an app that would keep track and then create strategies to help increase your vibrational level. The problem with that for me right now, I mean, the tracking would just be really interesting and useful, but the strategies to increase it is challenging. But something that I have been doing recently, I may as well chuck that in the comments as well, is a enlightenment meditation. And it's been really good. I've been listening to it a lot, at minimum once a day, in some cases up to like 4 times a day, whether it's kind of like in the background on like a car journey, in a state where I need to like prepare myself for something. I would listen to this as a way of building internal self-belief. And that's probably one of the main things. I actually found this meditation before I was looking at this chart properly, and the whole point of it is building internal self-belief and removing self-doubt and removing insecurity and fear. And it does that by sort of iterating the words, you have everything you need. You have everything you need. You have everything you need. You know what you need to know. Things like this, right? And when you think about that, it's like, how much of your life have you spent subconsciously thinking, I don't have what I need? Almost constantly, right? Very often would you have thoughts of regret, embarrassment, worthiness, all of that. I would say that was extremely common for me. And that's a state of fear, and that's a state of shame and guilt, and that then leads to desire. And it's the desire to have things that solve the insecurity. And that leads to the entire American culture of materialistic items, supercars, mansions, trophy wives, making X dollars a month. I'm really starting to think that these are the emotional states created within a culture which promote worthiness, which drives fear that you're not enough, which creates a desire to be someone who can own that pride, and that is achieved through courage. And I just said all the terms that are down here in that third dimension, which then lead to fourth. But I honestly think a lot of people probably get trapped down here, but I do also think some people rise up. And so with that meditation, I think that you can achieve a state of neutrality. And what that says here is you feel like you have purpose. You feel hopeful. You have optimism. You are in a state of happiness and productivity. You're in the zone. Which is a far more enjoyable state. And you're not working out of fear. You're working out of enjoyment and flow. And that's where things get interesting, because if you can achieve that consistently and sort of keep developing your knowledge and keep consuming the right information, that's where you seem to be able to elevate into a more profound area. And yeah, I think that's something I'm working on. I think there are some influences in my life that pull me down and some that pull me up, and I'm moving around a lot while trying to build I've got a strong, sustainable organization at this point. I've got good people working within the organization. I've also realized that I am a creative. I am an entrepreneur. I'm not really a creative, but I have a lot of ideas. I'm willing to push or question the status quo. I'm willing to take on unique experiences, which I guess help make me more well-rounded and worldly and understanding of reality. I'm a non-academic, right? That's always been a big insecurity for me, coming from a more academic family, I would say. I'm not an academic. I'm more of I'm an entrepreneur. I'm someone who likes to try new things and learn new things and innovate and act on my ideas. And yeah, that puts me in a state of moving around a lot, and doing all sorts of things. But the good thing about it sounds chaotic when I explain it like that, but I do have a strong, stable agency that I've built through really working on my discipline over recent years. But yeah, anyway, going back to this whole idea of sort of consciousness levels and vibrational levels. Sometimes we have to take care of ourselves, right? I suppose now is one of those cases. But my goal is to be of service to people, and that's why I don't want to be too much in these sort of internal states where I'm not putting as much effort into the outside world as I could. But yeah, if I look at overall society, I think, we're held down a lot, and, this is a wealthy society. We're out in the West, if you're making over, I think, 34,000 a year, you're in the top 1% globally, or top 40,000 a year or something like that. It's super low, by our standards. But if you go to any country with poverty, your eyes are really opened to that. And you know, if you're in a state of survival, I mean, there's gonna be enlightened people within that, but most of them are gonna be in fear. You got to put food on the table, and you'll work whatever job you can do. And then once you get into the cycle of working to earn some level of income, that becomes your lifestyle. And then the people around you shape your thinking. And there's all sorts of traps in that sense. But it sounds like a cool idea to focus on elevating the vibrational state of humanity on a worldwide level. And I do believe that starts with myself. And it also, in order to ground it in reality, you know, I'm not the kind of person who's going to say, you know, become a monk and you know, become extremely spiritual and just focus on prayer and meditation, you know, somewhere in India or in Nepal or something like that. Like, I would say no, because you're kind of neglecting the society you were born into, that you're trying to escape. And I do think that understanding perspectives is useful, but I think that simply kind of removing yourself from it doesn't help anyone other than yourself, and it comes back to selfishness. And maybe it will. Maybe you'll come back someone who has ideas to help people, for example, and that's great. And then you've learned from it. So I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, you know, doing that for the rest of your life, for example, becoming a monk, I don't think really helps anyone. And so it has to be grounded in logic, and it has to be grounded in where you have come from. And I think and sort of the laws that govern the society that you were born into and grew up in. I don't know. I think that's important as well. You know, you grew up in a certain country. You were given everything you have from the place that you were brought up in. And yeah, I think it's important to give back to the whole. You know, so yeah. What I'm trying to say is that, you know, from an economic point of view, from a sort of you know, we have to like build a stronger base, or we have to increase the average level of wealth, for example, for people to even think about this stuff. And we when it's not about teaching them like a religion either. It's more about normalizing activities which may open their mind to that as something that is standard practice, if that makes sense. Because why would you want to live in fear? I think at the end of the day, if you're in a state of fear, you're suffering. And I mean, I think we are all, or most of us are suffering most of the time. But I have noticed some people are not in that state. They are enjoying themselves and what they do. And I feel that I definitely am feeling that more over time on average. And I want to keep that trend going, if that makes sense. So yeah, basically what I'm saying is I want to learn more about this. I want to continue to raise my own vibrational level on average. I want to be someone of service, a more well-rounded individual, someone more knowledgeable, someone who makes more of an impact in the work that I do. I think it all leads around this. If I can have a high vibrational state on a day-to-day basis, I will simply attract more people with my business. I've experienced that with my own leadership and my own business. No one wants someone leading from pride or fear. Like, it's not attractive in the same way. And there's no doubt in that, you know. You have to lead with that presence. You have to make sure you're someone who gets into that consistently to do that. And then if that becomes who you are, more is going to flow that way. It all stems from one leader or two leaders, right? And I believe that if you increase your state into those higher realms on a more consistent basis, then everything around that follows. I believe Steve Jobs was one of those people who did that. You know, with his experiences in India, for example, spiritually with psychedelics, just his general philosophy of life, it seemed like he was. But then he also had his issues with anger and pride and desire and all that, right? So I'm not saying he was like freaking Jesus Christ, right? Although Jesus Christ, like, who knows? But yeah, that's an interesting one with Jesus Christ. I need to learn more. I mean, obviously, I've listened to the Christians talk about him, and I've heard the Muslims talk about him, the Hindus, the atheists. But if what they're saying is true about him, then, I mean, he's full consciousness, he's 12th dimension. And if it's possible to increase levels of consciousness, there's questions around what that means. And that's, you know, I'm interested in that. Why are some people higher? How do they achieve it? What does that make them? I mean, they're leaders, right? Like, they give the purpose. They provide the way forward, and that's why role models exist, or that's why role models. That's why people need role models. They need these people to listen to. They need people to follow, and they want to work out how they do it. Like, I don't know how the other day, but I saw this clip of a guy. I saw this clip of a guy talking. I guess he was like a mentor, but he looked probably about my age. And he was talking to this guy who's like probably, I don't know, 18, 19, about how to work well in the industry. And I think he was like in finance or something. And the advice he gave was, you know, don't exercise because you can put the energy output into sleep instead, and he'd rather prioritize like a certain amount of sleep. And, you know, there's been times where I've thought in that way, and I'm not thinking in that way anymore. And, you know, I mean, that guy's an employee in this larger system, and he's being driven through fear to work longer hours to try and impress, things like that. So, and that's all to try and retain his job and things like that. So, but, you know, that kid needed a role model for the sort of value system that he is operating by, and people need that. You know, there's no Jesus Christ for that guy who's entering that industry. So he needs someone who's got a bit more experience so he can help guide the way forward a little bit. And, you know, we just look online. It's like people need these types of people. They need other humans. You know, even AI is becoming that for a lot of people. I've been talking to AI a lot more. My issue with AI for that is it kind of has a lot of confirmation bias. I don't really feel like I'm being truly listened to. And that's probably partly why I'm making this video. By the way, I've been talking extremely like slow and yeah, I don't expect anyone to listen to this, but the benefit for me making it is this sort of expression that you can't really just like say to someone. Like, imagine if I just sat down here, fuck, it's 40 minutes. How has it been 40 minutes? Sat down here and just talked for 40 minutes. So they'd be like, bro, you're crazy. Exactly. Like, I guess that's the thing. I can do this. I can just turn on a camera. No, I'm not going to try and impress you with my language. I'm not going to try and explain how the world works. I'm literally going to talk about something interesting that's on my mind. And when I have that kind of exploration available with talking, I can do it. So yeah. Feels right for some reason. I'm just gonna go with that. So yeah, I'm gonna end it there. But yeah, I'll leave those links down below if someone somehow chooses to watch this. But if not, as I said, it's been fun expressing it. Peace out.